Nothing like a Friday afternoon sunset watching the pond. G'day, this is R3 Ignited. Thanks again for tuning in for another waffling on episode of Talking About Nature. Just thought I'd top up the pond here. I actually had an incident today where the algae over on the terracotta pond over there blocked up the outlet there, causing it to overflow and drain out the main pond. Isn't exactly some good news, and it's quite frustrating, but at least the water only went down to the level of where the pump is there, so the fish didn't run out of environmental space to swim. So I think the issue is these strainers here are getting blocked with algae, so I'm going to have to develop a much better system to prevent that, especially if I head off on trips or holidays and I'm away. I want this pond to be able to be reliable and sustain itself. But anyway, it's Friday afternoon, and it's really nice watching the sunset here. And what I wanted to talk about was this water change idea that I sort of come up with at the last minute. And you pretty much can save a lot of money doing your water changes this way. And it's not even messy, it's quite clean way to do it. So what we got to do is take about 22 litres out of Cozzy's tank here. He's due for his monthly water change. I don't actually change the water in this tank every week. I just change it monthly, and yes, there is a lot of fish in here for this particular size tank, but I've got some very heavy filtration here, full of Purigen Seachem Matrix, and I've got an organic sump here, some nitrate abusing plants like peace lilies and pothos, and a touch of salvinia in the top there, and then it flows back into this sump, which also has a lot of biomedia in here. So this tank has a very huge excessive filtration system. I've tested the nitrates, the ammonia, nitrites, they've all been zero, even when I have not changed the water in this tank for 2 to 3 months. TDS in this tank is quite high, but that's also due to the fact that goldfish are quite messy. So you just limit on how much you feed them. The gourami in here is quite happy, so I've decided I'm going to leave him in here. I was going to move him. Eventually I am going to upgrade this tank and make a much larger one that'll fit the 900ml by 600ml size stand that I've built here. And then the canister filter can go down underneath, probably behind the terrariums or something. But anyway, back to the water change conversation. What I've got here is just one of these cheap little $6 Bunnings buckets. And then we're just going to grab some airline tubing, which I've rigged up with an air stone. Now I know what you're thinking. Air stone. How's that going to allow the water to siphon through? Well, it actually does. It's porous enough to do that, but the air stone is also got a bit of weight to it as well, which stops the tube sliding out of the aquarium. So we're just going to unravel this and hook it up in here. There's a couple of different ways. We could just dangle this in the main tank, but I try my best to not disturb the fish environment as much as I can. So what I'll do is I'll just dangle it into the sump in here. And then, as you can see, it will siphon down into the bucket. So what you want to do, obviously make sure this is sanitised, running under hot water. Just before you do this, just suck it a little bit. And then the water will start flowing out. Now, the beauty of this is, well, actually, to some people it might be frustrating that it will take a long time to fill this bucket, but I quite like it because I can just get the water draining out, and then I can get on with doing other things around the house or even other maintenance on other tanks. So the idea is just to fill that up, and it doesn't make a mess, which is another advantage of having it siphon slow. and then fill that bucket up with the water out of this tank. And then what we're going to do, we are going to put that water out in the pond, so that way it doesn't go to waste, and we'll allow Mother Nature to take its course. Also, that water would be good for plants, but being winter and it's actually dry, I probably should use it on plants, but winter being a dry and not so humid season, plants do tend to have the potting mix or the dirt and the roots dry out a bit more. But in this case, I'm just going to tip it in the pond rather than waste it. So yeah, we'll just let that drain out for a bit and then we'll chuck it back outside in the pond. Just before I do empty that bucket in the pond, just thought while it's filling up, just have a little scratch around here, show you some of the resources that you need if you ever want to make one of those siphon tubes. So you just need a little bit of airline here, which you can pick up at your local pet shop cheap. This is a 5 metre roll, which I picked up for $5, yeah, $1 a metre, which has got more than enough there. And then you can just get a couple of joiners if you want. You could use a T-junction if you're doing 2 tanks at once into one bucket. There's an air stone there for the weight. Even a suction cup, you could put the tube on there to hold it in, but I just prefer to use the weight of the air stone. And then you could use a control valve if you wanted to siphon it out even slower. So yeah, just airline parts really. It's pretty easy to make. I thought about doing a build video on it, but I'll let you work that one out. It's quite easy. And I do that kind of water change with all my tanks. Actually, I hardly ever change the water in my tanks, that's the honest truth. And I've tested all my water with that master test kit there, and I've had absolutely no threat of ammonia or nitrites or nitrates. It's all about not having too many fish, as well as having a good bioload in your substrate or your filtration, and having a lot of plants which absorb those negative nutrients out of the water. As you can see, this tank here is a good example. This used to have a lot of guppies in it, and this is a little 20 litre tank, so too many guppies in here caused the tank to overdo the nutrients, and which also resulted in some of this green hair algae. But the green hair algae was quite a good catalyst to contain or bring the nutrients down, so I wasn't getting any parts per million readings of nitrates or ammonia or nitrites. So the green hair algae is quite a good reaction in some circumstances. It can help the water level out the negative nutrients, even though it looks quite ugly. So what I've done is I've moved those guppies out, and those guppies originally come from the pond outside. They bred in one of my ponds out there, so they're just living their life out in this slightly larger 38 litre tank. And then here I put the blue beta, male beta, in there. And I've mentioned this in my other videos, he did have a female which he got quite aggressive with, and he ended her, and he also killed all the offspring which they had, which was quite sad. I should have separated them, but I didn't. You live, you learn, that's what fish keeping's about. But I did get 2 healthy babies out of that in the end, which are living in this tank here. This tank also has a bit of green hair algae, but the snails are quite hungry. Comment below if I'm wrong, but I think betas may eat algae as well. So yeah, that water change system I use even in these tanks. It's just a very easy way to change your water, very cheap way to build a water change system. Eventually I would like to hook up an automatic system where I have pipes running into all these tanks, and then have a pump which pumps it out the side here, and where I ran that airline out there, and just send it out to the pond automatically. So yeah, that's a long-term goal. But for now, we'll use this little DIY system, which I think works quite well. As you can see, that's not filling up too fast, but it's definitely running its course. And what we want, I find, you can see where it's drained down there. So what I want to do is get the 22 litres out, which roughly is about that much of this tank. This is a 136 or 5 litre tank, Aqua One 620 tall. And that's about all I do every month. And I've had 0 negative nutrients in my water test results. I like to call them negative nutrients because they basically kill your fish. It's nitrogen build up in the water from waste. So yeah, that's just sitting there. It's not affecting any of the plants. And that way I don't have to hang it in here. I do have a little corner attachment here, which I thought would come in handy. So if I do have to dangle it down a bit deeper in a longer tank, I can sort of have it offset and coming off at an angle just to sort of help stabilise it, especially if you were to sort of cramp this tube down on a tank lid that might have a bit of weight to it. It might squeeze it a bit. So this plastic fitting just sort of allows it to sort of sit like out there. Anyway, we'll fill this up and we'll take it outside and chuck it in the pond and may even water some plants. I just thought while we wait for that to fill up as well, might just make up some dechlorinated water ready to go. It's quite good to add your dechlorinator and then fill it up with water after, so it diffuses and mixes together. And also while that's filling up, it'll allow the chlorine to evaporate with the chlorine neutraliser. Just going to go with the API tap water conditioner. It's actually a good value for money one because you can actually buy it in quite larger quantities for much better value. I just bought a smaller amount of it because I like to try different chemicals. I mainly use Seachem Prime, which I have stocked in the shed in larger amounts. That was a once-off expensive buy, but I'm set forever. I also like to use this one, Aqua Essential, which is like a more concentrated one. But in this case, because we're not replacing all the water, we're just going to add a little bit of this tap water conditioner. So I'll just grab 2 ml, and I just go 2 ml to 2 litres. I'm sure API specify a different amount. 1 ml for 15 litres. Yeah, okay, so I am overdoing it, but that's alright. It's better to overdo it than underdo it, especially with the effects of chlorine and chloramine. So we just put that in there. Take this over to the sink, we'll fill it up. These are 2 litre jugs. Eventually I'd like to create as I was saying, an automatic water change system where I can drain the water automatically into the pond, and then I can maybe the automatic drainage system is a more appropriate way of saying it for all my tanks, to automatically drain them in the pond. Like this one here, it'd be easy, right? So I'd just put a T-junction on the canister filter here and then run a pipeline down through the floor and then under the house and out to the pond, and then just have a little tap there. So when I want to automatically drain the pond, I can just use the pump system pressure from the canister. And it'd only need a low pressure because once it goes down through the floor, gravity does the rest out of the pond. And then I can typically just get probably a PVC or just a wider silicone hose, and then just hook it up to the tap in there in the bathroom, and then just run that hose out here and turn it on, and then fill it up, and then add some dechlorinator into the tank. But I don't know how risky that might be, adding straight chlorine tap water into a fish environment. Yes, it would be more effective and faster, and some people like it. But I'm kind of thinking I'll steer away from it and just stick with the good old-fashioned 2-litre jug, mix it up, add a few jugs in, top it up. Yes, it takes longer, but your water's chlorine contents are removed and it's not being dumped directly into your fish. Another way would be to get a rainwater tank, or even just some sort of water storage container, and store dechlorinated water ready for your water changes. That is another way you could do it. There's many ways you can do this, but my only concern is I just would like to have an automatic drainage system so I can send all this fish water back out of the pond. I think he's got swim bladder again. I find with these Ryokan fish, if you feed them very cheap foods, which I did last night, I tried some of the cheaper brand of flakes that you get at your supermarket, which I just kept as honestly backup food as well as variety food. I just find that with Ryokan fish, or Ryokan goldfish, or even some of these fantail fish, it causes swim bladder problems. This cheap food. I'm not sure of the exact chemistry or ingredients of these cheap little $4, $2 foods that you buy in the supermarket, but it's giving him a problem there. But when I feed him decent brand food, like this one for example, this is one by Sarah, this is a colour pond food, he never seems to get that swim bladder problem. But if I go to a cheaper brand food, like, say for example this one, which is only $3 or $4, yeah, he gets a swim bladder problem. But then these are also floating pellets. Goldfish do ingest air a lot when they eat food from the surface, so I highly recommend some sinking food. This colour food does not sink though, but I do crush it a bit so it sinks, or I pre-soak it. Also, this brand is quite good as well. I've never had swim bladder problems with Ryokan fish using Bug Bites, which is by Fluval. But yeah, just thought we'd gossip a bit about food while this is filling up. These are mystery snail eggs, which have been laid on the back of the tank. That's these. Come on, get out of the way. That's these fellas here. So what they do is they climb up the tank out of the water and lay eggs. I can't wait for them to hatch because I really am quite excited to see more snails in this tank. Some of the elder ones there have passed on. So I've got the 2 there. I originally just bought 4, but I'm very happy I've got eggs there. $1 mil for each 15 gallons or 60 litres. Ah, right, okay. So it's not 1 mil for 15 litres. That's alright. It just means that this is heavily concentrated and you'll get quite a lot of water changes out of just a small bottle of this. Okay, so that's even the more reason that I recommend API's tap water conditioner. Getting there, almost full. I love doing this on a Friday, or monthly Friday, when I do the water change of this tank, because it takes a while. It allows me a bit of time to prepare some dechlorinated water, as well as prepare some fluids for myself. Alright, so the bucket's almost full now, so what we're going to do to stop this flowing, we will just lift it up and just let the air go back through it, see how it bubbles through, and that's pretty much it. And then just like the weight of that, it's just very heavy and it allows it to just sit there and not go anywhere. So now that we got the bucket full, we'll take it outside, tip it out. Alright, so got our almost semi-full bucket here. You know, I guess doing it this awkward way also gives me a little bit of exercise. Not much when you're spending Friday nights like I do. Anyway, we'll get this outside. And the only reason I put this water in the pond out here is because I don't get any nitrate or ammonia readings. So I've got a pretty good system worked out there. So I don't quite fill the bucket up, I just fill it up out there, or to when that tank level goes down to what I said before. And then I'll just take it over the pond here. And I'll just tip it in there. Not too fast, you just want your fish to sort of have a gentle release of water, but also so it doesn't stir up the substrate in the bottom there. Okay, now that we've got rid of the amount of water that we need to, I'm going to put this first jug of chlorinated water in here. You just want to put it in gently so you don't stir up the bottom too much. Not that it matters with this fella because he stirs everything up in the bottom. But just a general rule, if you've got an aquascaped tank with a really nice design or smaller fish that might not like it. There we go. Right, so we're going to make up a few more of those and we'll just keep filling it up. Start to fill it up. I normally, with this water change, I chuck in 2 of these 2 litre jugs, give the fish about half an hour, and chuck in another 2 of these 2 litre jugs. Then just work your way up like that so they don't get a really bad acclimation. You just want them to sort of settle with their new water, not just have the shock of it. As mentioned before, due to the concentration of this dichlorinator, we're just going to go a couple of drops. Lucky last one. I did a few of these off camera, otherwise you'd be sitting here more bored than usual hearing me waffle on. Rightio, so that's the last one. Tank's filled up. I like to have just a little bit of an air pocket here, just to, I don't know, I just like to have the air pocket just so I can see the water flowing here, as well as, you know, these mystery snails tend to just go up above the water to lay eggs. As you can see, I've gone a bit above their egg line there, which I shouldn't have, but we'll see what happens. I just thought I'd give the fish a bit more water than what they normally get, because normally I just fill it here, which is just under that mystery snail egg line. And this is the first time I've had mystery snails lay eggs, and I didn't expect it, and I didn't really think that they will survive even when they do hatch. Not sure if these fish will munch them up yet, but it's all nature and we'll let it take its course. But yeah, that's a really quick water change system or water change DIY method by using simply some old air lines lying around and an old air stone that you don't need. It's just one way I like doing it. I find it very easy. I find even though it takes a while, it's still easy because I can just get it running and just set it and forget about it while I do other things. And that's all I change in this tank is just one bucket every month. As I said before, I've done 3 months and this water's still been fine. But I'm going to stick to the monthly routine because these fish are getting bigger and some of them will have to move on to a new home, or they may need a bigger tank, which I also am planning on getting. Even if I do get a larger tank to cover this cabinet that I built to the exact size, I am only going to have these 2 fish in here, these 2 Ryakins, and the rest, well, I guess they're going to go in the pond, aren't they? So yeah, that's the water change system I use for the goldfish tank. Thank you again for hearing me waffle on. Much appreciated. And we'll talk again soon on another Artistry Ignited Nature Tour. Cheers.